If you don't want to risk an expensive septic disaster, this is the maintenance protocol you need to know with every inspection step that will keep your system running smoothly. What's going on, guys? Luke here with Luna Environmental. Now, the truth is, septic systems are really designed to last a long time, and most major issues are mostly preventable. And because we've boiled down aerobic septic inspection to a science, I'm giving you our exact playbook so you can copy it and get the full life out of your system. The very first thing our techs are designed to do as soon as they land on location is to actually document what they see. Before any work is done, we want to capture in real time, photo and video if necessary, what it looks like. For example, this is a cracked concrete lid you see on screen over one of the clarifying chambers of this aerobic septic system. And as you can imagine, concrete lids over time, if they get dropped, if they get rolled, if they go down a hill, which lots of systems are on hills here in Central Texas, then those things can cause problems. If you have a cracked lid, anything can get in there, right? Bugs, rodents, water, when it rains, causing high water levels in the system. We want to make sure we take a picture of this so that we can advise the homeowner to fix this immediately. Now, after the initial documentation, the very first thing that we want to inspect is what we call the doghouse and the air compressor. If you're a homeowner, you've seen that concrete block that fits over that air compressor on your system. And we call it a doghouse because, well, it kind of looks like a doghouse. But the concrete is there to, number one, protect the air compressor, and number two, it also kind of silences the sound. So if you're a homeowner and you can hear that air compressor inside your house, because it does have a buzzing sound to it, you can actually flip that doghouse around so that the enclosed side of the concrete is facing your house, and therefore the sound is moving away from your house rather than towards it. And if you're wondering what that buzzy air compressor sounds like, it sounds like this. Now, with any system, there are more complex parts and less complex parts, but most of the time with any air compressor, what we want to do is simply clean the filter and clean around the compressor. That filter is, of course, pulling in air, and over time it gets dirty. We want to pull it out, blow it off, and brush around that plastic housing for that air compressor filter as well to make sure it's cleaned, put it back, screw it on, and move on with our lives. The second thing we move to is the control box or the control panel. Immediately, we want to open it, ensure that all the breakers are on, and you can do this as a homeowner if you're experiencing any problems with your system. It's a great place to check immediately just to see if something was switched off and maybe a tech left and they forgot to turn it back on. We want all those breakers to be on, and we specifically want to check for corrosion. It's one of the most common problems we see, that those wires inside of a control box, especially the exposed wires, are going to corrode over time because that sewage gas has a tendency to creep up, and those wires can short out over time because of it. Now, if you're a homeowner, you're looking at the box and you see that everything looks normal, not a lot of corrosion. One of the other problems we see with a lot of wiring and control boxes is simply that it wasn't wired correctly upon installation. And it's why often homeowners experience a pump float not working or something going wrong relatively quickly after a new house was built. It's simply because the installer was moving too quickly with the wires, was moving too quickly with the installation, and ultimately things were missed. And you can see on screen actually one of our technicians rewiring the pump floats and the pump to the proper places on the control box here. After we do that, we're going to check the air pressure that can also be found inside the control box, a little plastic tube that can be pulled out, put on our pressure gauge, and we can get exactly how much pressure is being pushed from that compressor. And essentially what we want to look for is just inside normal range. If it's too high or too low, we know something's going on with the system. And for an aerobic system in particular, this is a relatively big deal because oxygen makes it all work. So if that air compressor is not pushing the proper amount, we need to fix something immediately. After that, we want to open every single lid to each chamber on the tank. That's the pre-treatment tank or the primary tank. It's the aeration chamber, the clarifier tank, and the pump tank. We want to see what's going on, see if we can see high water levels in any of them. And ultimately, kind of like a checkup when you go to the doctor, we're looking for some basic signals like in the primary tank. Do we have a scum layer? Can we see it growing on top? Can we see in the aeration chamber those jacuzzi-like bubbles? Can we see in the clarifier tank that the water is still and that there's not a bunch of solid buildup? And can we see in the pump tank that the pump is there, it's wired properly, the floats can be pulled up, the alarms are going off? Basic routine maintenance checks. Now, when the lids are open, we want to do a sludge test. This is basically where we take a gigantic straw, we stick it down into each tank, and we pull it up looking at how much solid material we pull into the straw with the water. So we want to take a basic measurement of those tanks to see where we're at, because that's the most reliable way we can figure out how long we have before that tank really needs to be pumped out. It's a real-time look at how many solids have built up. Now, after we do a simple sludge test, we are going to test the pump floats. These are the things that raise up as the water levels rise. And on that bottom pump float, that first one that's wrapped around the bottom of the pump, this is the one that should trigger that pump to turn on and start pumping out the water at a particular time. So inside of that control panel exists a little clock, and where those white tabs are pushed out of the clock, that would be what time the pump is allowed to turn on and distribute that water. Often it's during the nighttime, right? So if this pump float is raised up during those corresponding hours, that pump's going to turn on and it's going to start distributing that water. Now, there are 3 pump floats wrapped around any given pump in the pump tank that we want to raise up manually, and we want to see if they are working. And that final pump float at the top is what we call the alarm float, which is going to indicate those high water levels. If the water is raised and raised and raised and raised, and that final top one gets raised, is an indication that the pump is not turning on, and that's why the alarm goes off and it sounds like this when we raise it up. Now, as we get to the final stages of our inspection, one of the things we do is check the chlorine levels of the system before the water gets pumped out. In many systems, chlorine is introduced before that water gets pumped out to the earth as just a final disinfection layer. Now, the truth is, as a homeowner, adding more chlorine into your system is extremely easy. But one of the things we want to inspect in any maintenance inspection is simply, are there problems with the chlorine levels, meaning too high or too low, in that it's either not getting dripped out properly, or it's flooding the system and sort of getting poured out because there's a crack somewhere, something is broken, and essentially you're over or under chlorinating the water. Now, before we put the lids back on, we want to inspect the drain field, the drip field, or the application area. This is basically where that final treated water either gets dripped out underneath the ground, or it even gets sprayed out via sprinkler heads onto the earth to be evaporated and put back into the water cycle. We want to see if anything's going on with the drain fields, because a drain field fix or even replacement can get really expensive, and we want to make sure we're staying ahead of this one. So when we see an area in a yard that's really green grass and it's really lush, that's actually an indication sometimes that there can be a problem with the drain field, because too much is being dripped out underground and it's actually rising and it's causing some fertilization to happen, that you then see some really lush green grass. It looks pretty on top, but it can be an indication of a problem below. Now, I want to show you something we came across in a maintenance inspection just the other day, this dripping pipe that was sitting relatively close to the application area of this particular homeowner's septic system. And after seeing it and testing several different things within the system, we learned, hey, this pipe is actually not a part of the septic system. So while it's not our responsibility to fix it, we were able to let the homeowner know that this break in this pipe is dripping water constantly throughout the day, and has been for who knows how long, into the yard and wasting you a bunch of money. And frankly, in our septic inspections, we come across things like this all the time that we're able to make homeowners aware of, so they can fix these issues even if they're not septic related. Now, before we put the lids back on, we want to flush out that drainage system or that drip field as best as we can, because as you can imagine, as we're pumping out wastewater over time through pipes that have tiny little holes in them and it's dripping out the water, sometimes solids or just tiny little micro solids can start to build up, clog those holes, and ultimately we're dealing with wastewater. It's not drinkable water. And so at the end of the day, clogging does happen. But when we are inspecting, we can actually allow water to flow through and essentially come through the flush valve. So we build up a bunch of pressure, push water through the system, allow it to come back into that pump tank. So we can allow some pressure to build up, flush that system out, push those solids out of those small holes, and just do a little bit of a reset, kind of like changing the oil in your car every 5,000 or 10,000 miles. We want to reset those pipes and make sure that we're not letting solids build up over time. Now, after we close up all of the lids, we take some final pictures, photo documentation, which, by the way, we've been doing through the entire time. And I'll flip through just a few examples of things that we are documenting so that we have a full, comprehensive view of your aerobic septic system's story. No matter how old or how long it's been there, we want to know before we ever get there what's going on. And every time we maintain it, we want to make sure we're documenting it just like you can see on screen. Because frankly, when your septic goes out, it causes big problems. Now, whether you're maintaining your aerobic septic system as a homeowner yourself, or you're hiring a technician or a company to do it, use the checklist that I gave you in this video as something to reference, because it ensures two things. Number one, you're not gonna miss anything and you're gonna get more life out of your system. And number two, if you're hiring somebody else, you're gonna get what you pay for, making sure that they're running through all of these things, and hopefully even more and in a little bit more detail than my flyover view in this video. But this is an external reference you can hold other people accountable to that you're paying, so you make sure you get your money's worth. So there it is, a proper septic system maintenance inspection from start to finish. If you got some value here and you know somebody else who would also get some value from watching this video, hit the share button, send it to them, because remember, here we're trying to make septic simple. And from Luke here at Luna Environmental, I'll see you in the next video.